It is Bednarek.
50 meters left in the race.
Bednarek.
Every time he steps on it.
Bednarek.
He has run more sub-20 legal performances this season.
Leron Williams, which you can call me the law. At Power 5 schools, you have the coach and then you have a volunteer coach. My first years of coaching, I had women. I coached women's teams. Men and women are different. So women, you have to give them attention and you have to bring them along and you have to give them details. It has to be sound advice. As a man, I can go ahead and man and be like, hey, get your shit together. Like, hey, go over there and like, let's go. He understand exactly what I'm talking about. Whether he knew how to do it or not, he would go try. When I had to coach women, it made me more detailed as a coach because there were some things that were gray areas for me. I had to go to books and read it and study it and be like, oh, this is what I was talking about. First night I landed at the school, I had my moving truck and we moved all my stuff into the dorm. I was like, where's Kenny? Where's Kenny? He's walking into the door and I was like, oh, there he goes. It was easy for me to find him. He, one, had that smile, but he was tall. Put him off to the side and I said, young man, we got work to do. And he was like, yeah, I understand. And it wasn't like this, man, what you talking about type of attitude. It was like, yeah, I know I got work to do. That's how I knew it was gonna be some crazy.
I knew I had a lot of work to do and I had the goals that I wanted to reach. And with the mentality he kind of came in, I didn't know how his coaching style was. First day of practice, I already knew what he was coming in with. We were discussing this yesterday and I always laugh about it. I mean, he came in and if you were a minute late, he'd be like, go home. It was just crazy because as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, he's here for business. Somebody came in and he's like, go home. And they're like, wait, what? And then they would just leave. So right after that, we meshed and we got to work and the results showed itself in the season.
D1 versus JUCO is completely different.
Yeah, it's a different lifestyle. You're kind of still in the mud and you got to get out of there. And I mean, a lot of talented athletes there. You just got to make sure that you're not distracted and listen to your coaches and do everything to a T in order to get out. It's a different world. Coming from a small town, it was easier for me not to go out and party. I went to maybe 1 or 2 parties in the beginning of the year. I had my goals that I wanted to reach, so I was more focused on that. I mean, I would be home, playing my game instead of going an hour all the way to the cities to party. For me, it was easy. And having him, be there, help discipline me even more so. He was, a mentor and kind of a father figure as well because I don't have a father. So I kind of took that role and was helping me become a better man.
The way I was coached was big brother. My big brother was telling me this stuff. That's how he got to me was, look, I love you, but you're gonna have to change. And it's gonna hurt, but you're gonna have to change. Kind of like life. You can't sit back and do the same stuff. You do the same stuff, it's insanity. Sometimes it takes somebody older than you, wiser than you to say, hey dog, hey, sit down. It's cool and all, but you need to change. When I first started coaching, I was working at a small NAIA school in Nebraska. I had some athletes who were nobody recruited. How can I impact these kids' lives? For me, it was discovering how I could. And it was being that person. Most of my young men didn't have fathers. Most of my young women didn't have fathers. It was a struggle for them because they didn't know how to receive fatherly love or fatherly critique. I had a father and it was tough love. There was also some things that my dad was very quiet about. There was a way that he approached it that he would tell you when you were ready. That was the way I approached my athletes was when you got it, let's move on to the next thing.
I like what he put in, remember I used to call your
oh yeah, my Bible.
He has everything written down in his journal and I would say it's the Bible because as soon as he was telling me everything and give me the details to what I was supposed to do, then I would apply it to the track and then you see a massive improvement. Running 20.3 indoors and then I think we ran 20.6 and then we ran 20.3 the next time we came in indoors. And I'm like, yeah, this man got the Bible. So every time I see the book, I was just like, hey, yeah, that's the Bible. Show me what's in there. I don't think there was a moment where he said, hey, you're not ready. From the start, I was always like, my ears are always open. Any information he would give me, I was there to listen because I always wanted to improve and I wanted to get better. I don't think once I was thinking that I was, the top dog from the beginning, like I was an underdog. I mean, I knew I was running fast times, but I always knew somebody was going to run another fast time. So I had the world lead at one point. You know, next few days, somebody else had it. So I'm like, okay, what do I got to do to improve myself in order to get the world lead back the next day? Any advice he gave me, I was always open ears. As an athlete, and then having my teammates and him talking with them, I'm like, hey, you should listen to him. It's not my place to like always go and tell them what to do. They have to be willing to do it themselves.
I was very nervous taking the job there. You see coaching changes, and then he could have fell off the face of this earth, and everybody would have been like, what happened to Kenny Bednarek? And it would have been on my shoulders, because as a coach, that's my responsibility. That was tough, and it weighed on me a lot. We had this saying in track and field, like most people who are competing at high levels, they understand it's an individual sport. He's my friend. I'm competing against him. How do I go into this track meet and compete against this guy that I talk to and smile, we break bread with every day? At the end of the day, he's a shark, I'm a shark. It's a shark world. Sharks are eating each other in track and field, right? How do I eat if he's trying to eat at the same time? Well, I got to eat him. That's how I was thinking. As a coach, you have to realize the level that everybody's on. I could see that he was the biggest shark in the room. He was still missing some teeth, I would say. There was times where he would trip over his own feet. He couldn't maintain his balance on one foot. When you're world class, you're world class everywhere. It's not just the big things that you can see. It's world class in simple stuff. Kobe is really good at soccer, right? Kobe's really also fluent in like 6 other languages. Like, that's world class. When you think about things like that, world class athletes are world class everywhere. The same practices that go into being world class in one thing is the same practice that goes into everything else. I never let him get too high or too low. It was always visionary. I think at the University of Nebraska is when
That was the first 200 indoor?
Iowa first.
Oh yeah, Iowa first. So that was my second.
Iowa, you dropped 20.6, and it was kind of like, do you remember you slipped out the blocks for like the first 5 meters at Iowa? And we were like, and I'm sitting there like,
well, that was because it was the first time on a big track, so it was just, you know, elevated, and I'm like, how am I supposed to sprint going out while I'm just on the top of the turf?
I always ended up getting athletes that were great listeners because they knew that it was coming from a place of love. I never had anybody on his level. I didn't change who I was. I continued to be the same person. And because I knew if I could just be a great father figure to him, a great big brother to him, like, he would listen to anything I said. That was what happened. I didn't change anything. When he started accomplishing things, like he dropped 44.9 or something in the 4x4 at like the first meet or something, like pretty much like, oh shit. The plan I had for last week, I gotta throw it out the window because he just hit a new level. And that season, it was just crazy because he drops 20.6, he goes 44 or something in the 400. We rested him the next week. The Nebraska week, because it's where I went, so I knew how to run on the track. So I'm sitting up here like, hey, this is how you run on the track. So for me, I have been practicing telling him what to do at Nebraska. So by the time I told him, I had rehearsed those words so many times. The craziest thing was in warm-ups, he's super tight. Now this is Kenny. I had just been learning how to stretch athletes. He warms up and he's sweating. And so I'm stretching him. I put his leg over his, and I'm stretching him. I'm like, you feel kind of like bouncing. So I'm like, how you feel? What you feeling like today? He goes, I feel like 20.3 today, coach. I'm like, and in my head, I was like, oh shit, did he just say 20.3? Is he ready for 20.3? And I didn't say nothing. I just said, all right, let's go do it. Then he drops the fastest time in the world.
I think 20.32.
I still had the film on my phone. My mom was sitting next to me. They were going nuts. That's when I knew he had hit another level. And it was kind of like, oh shoot.
There was a thing that I don't think I've told anybody, but I would just do some like weird visualizations thing in my head before I went to bed. And it was like for my whole body, kind of like, you know, like those green scanning things that you see in the movies when it scans the body. For some reason, I just imagined that I had like a scanning thing going through my body, and then just coming all the way down and all the way back up to kind of like rejuvenate me for the next meet. Basically, it's like, hey, this is what I want to run. and then I ran it. It wasn't anything crazy. This is what I ran last week. We watched film, and then obviously, like you're saying, we were talking a lot. I just said I wanted to run this time because I saw what the other competitors were doing, and I was like, well, I need to get that back. Because as soon as I ran the 20.6, somebody else ran a little bit faster. And, you know, I just spoke it into existence by just talking about it, thinking about it.
So discipline became important, which is why I instilled the, hey, if you're not here by 3 o'clock, go home. Because that was a place where you couldn't be undisciplined and make it out. A lot of athletes at the JUCO level didn't have a lot of discipline, and that's why they were there. Some of the greatest JUCO coaches I saw were very disciplined coaches. There was just a lot of kids who weren't performing, and it was just because they were focused on other things.
Full, like, background coming out of just, you know, a situation that not many people will come out of, and just being able to excel. That's why I always had that feeling like, okay, you know, I've been doing this with minimum amount of training, and then you got this guy here that's going to give me what I need. So automatically I'm like, okay, I already know. Since I ran this time without anything, now I have something to, you know, add more to the body. It was a no-brainer. He's teaching me something new, and of course I'm going to feel a little bit weird and I might run a little bit slower. That's because my body is not used to what's going on. It's used to a certain pattern, and if he tries to change it up for the better, it's going to take some time to actually make it go faster. At the end of the day, it's going to be more efficient. Every single time he was telling me, I was like, hey, like, why is it so hard? Like, I can't do this. But then I got better and better. All the evidence was there that, hey, if I actually listen to what he's telling me to do, then I'm going to excel.